Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I'm, of course, your host, Chris White, and this is the LinkedIn Live program for technical sales professionals and technical sales leaders. And folks, these are live conversations. Here we are for most of us, the last week of summer. Those of us here in the United States, we're getting ready for a long weekend. And as I like to say, folks, these conversations are by design, unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. And I have a feeling we're going to have a little bit of fun in today's conversation. I've never met my guest in person, at least not yet. He and I are going to meet next week, but he and I recently connected on LinkedIn and honestly, instantly felt a bond. We were beginning to talk about the future of pre-sales. He and I agreed that we're at a bit of a crossroads, and we're going to be talking about AI and some of the other things going on. But before we jump into that, allow me to simply welcome and introduce my guest. His name is Brian Oehling. He is the former VP of Sales Engineering, Pre-Sales Consulting with SAP Concur. More importantly, he has recently launched a consulting business called Progressive Selling IQ. He is a super insightful guy. He is a super good guy, and we're going to have some fun. Brian, my friend, with that, welcome. So glad you could be here. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. I also love a few dad jokes. Not that we'll deliver any today with my organizations and people I know, and I also am a connoisseur of dad jokes. So if you have any, we can pop those in today.
You know what? Dad jokes, and my microphone is blinking red at me, which means I need to turn the volume down. Apparently, dad jokes are perfectly welcome on this show. So as I said, these programs are by design unpredictable. And we already have our first hello. And I can usually count on Cliff to say hello from
Cliff,
Virginia. Pre-sales indeed bring folks together in interesting ways. Yes, indeed. Cliff, nice to see you. By the way, folks, we do not see you out there by design. So if you do care to say hello, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions for Brian or myself, please feel free to ask. So, Brian, one of the things that you and I talked about a week or two ago was this idea that pre-sales is at a crossroads. Do you mind talking a little bit about how have you landed at this idea that we're at a crossroads?
Well, in my career, nearly two decades in pre-sales leadership, I've been through a few transformations. One was when we, being so long ago, did our pre-sales demo script planning on hieroglyphics. It was quite a while ago. So that was a whole analog type of approach.
That's where you started writing on caves?
That's where a lot of people think I started, hence the grayish hair. But secondly, really at the beginning of my career, the World Wide Web was this concept that was kind of crazy. We're in bulletin boards and forums and a lot of articles and research, going to the library, to study certain articles and deliver value. Worldwide came out and was extremely disruptive, extremely transformative, and it is table stakes. You have to rely on it today. And I'm seeing this new disruption around, yes, artificial intelligence. We have to say that word. But today, with that disruption, nearly 30 months ago, I think it is, just a little over 2 years that ChatGPT was announced and completely changed all of our worlds, all the way from the C-suite down to us as frontline leaders and individual contributors. So it's a little bit wild, wild west out there, Chris.
And when you say it's a little bit wild, wild west, I completely and totally agree. What are some of the symptoms or some of the manifestations of this wild, wild west situation or condition?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research and studying, and obviously how to modernize sales functions. And a lot of the industry thought leaders like Gartner and McKinsey are educating and telling the C-suite, CROs, chief revenue officers, sales officers, chief financial officers, that to really harness AI, you have to think of this concept of agentic AI workforces. And so in the future, the C-suite is looking to have org charts that not only have humans, but also have agents that are executing on our behalf. And so think of me as a solutions consultant out there trying to do my work, and I have a whole army And my success is in how I harness agents to execute tasks so I can bring the human intelligence to artificial intelligence. That's where we're going, and that's what the C-suite is focused on.
So I'm gonna just make this very personal just for a moment. I'll admit that I'm intimidated by AI in some regards. What are you seeing in terms of the folks that you're speaking with and working with? Are they excited by AI? Are they intimidated by AI? Is it sort of all the above? What are you actually seeing out there?
You're not alone, Chris. And a lot of us haven't even started leaning into artificial intelligence within pre-sales. And I think that's the real opportunity for us, is to lean into it. AI is not here to replace us. It's here to scale us. And all of us are feeling overwhelmed. And one of the recent things that we saw at SAP Concur was in 2024, we saw a lot of restructuring and changes happening, moving to an AI business suite first platform. And in that, we built a lot of functionality through Joule and whatnot to help our customers out there get productivity through the platform and the rich data that we have at SAP. Yeah. Moving forward in 2025, we weren't doing anything to help us leverage AI, generative AI, or agentic AI internally to drive our own productivity. And so I and my digital strategy and innovation organization came together and we launched a training program for people like you, 800 sellers in sales development, account exec, and pre-sales functions, to simply get familiar with what generative AI is, how can I use it in real use cases around prospect management, account strategies or deal strategies, meeting summaries, et cetera. And so, true story, people that were feeling overwhelmed like you, was at a sales kickoff when my team was launching this for our sales organization, and two reps who I highly respect were in the hall, not knowing I was behind them. And they were leaning over and saying, I've been to like 11, 12, 13 of these sales kickoffs, and this training was one of the best I've ever seen. I'm so excited to get this. I don't feel overwhelmed anymore.
Wow. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
When we were chatting a few weeks ago, you shared a term with me called augmented indispensability, if I'm not mistaken. And you said, if I'm recalling correctly, you said something to the concept or perspective of, Chris, if you take AI and plus HI, which I think is human intelligence, which right. Hopefully we're not completely, losing, that equals augmented indispensability. Can you elaborate on what that means to you?
Yeah, and I think through the digital transformation that we're seeing in our industry, you see organizations like Consensus. Garen Hess wrote the book, Buying or Selling is Hard and Buying is Even Harder. We've got this whole digital transformation that we saw where 83% of the buying process happens before we ever get there. So we have to take our subject matter expertise and have it travel digitally and at scale. So, and I'll get to the AI in just a moment, but this is the predecessor to what we're now seeing transformation, how we use them together. And so we've taken a lot of our pre-sales knowledge and put those into tools and knowledge libraries, demo solution videos that we can deliver at scale and get tremendous incremental lift on conversion rates. Artificial intelligence, and I kind of cringe when I see organizations saying an AI first organization. It's people first, AI driven organization, creates that augmented indispensability. And people that know me, this is a dad joke coming up. Artificial intelligence without human intelligence is fake stupidity. It hallucinates, it misinforms, and it creates a lot of challenges for us. And so humans are best at value framing. So you might have digital and AI help us kind of create value and KPI or industry norms or whatnot and build those scripts into our tools and our talk tracks. But it's the human empathy and authenticity that converts business. And that's where we need to work together as augmented pre-sales teams and organizations.
I could not agree. And I think a lot of us are struggling with finding that line between where does AI go to, and then where does the human brain pick up? If you follow me, and
yes.
I've even been surprised by some of what and I tend to like ChatGPT. I've been
Sure.
surprised by what it's been able to do, but there are times where I even find myself almost questioning myself, like, okay, I'm not sure I agree with that. So do I need to sort of push ChatGPT back a little bit? Does that make sense, Brian? Like,
It
I feel like
does.
I'm trying to find that line.
Yeah. A lot of success is going to be in us realizing that we are the critical thinkers. That is what human intelligence is bringing us. We don't work for AI. AI augments and works for us. We can never get out of the driver's seat. And this is from a book called The AI Driven Leader. Phenomenal book for leaders and C-suite. And it helps us understand that you're in the driver's seat always. And it really starts with simply getting into Copilot, getting into Claude, getting into ChatGPT, and just kind of playing around with it. Clifford on the notes here talked about using AI for discovery. Like, yes, absolutely. A couple of stats I'll share that are interesting on this. Gartner, in a couple of articles around where we're going in 2030, the future of sales and whatnot, which pre-sales is strategically aligned with, are this. 2027, 95% of sellers' research workflows will begin with AI.
Wow. 97%.
95%.
95%.
Okay, in 2027, that's 2 years away. That's a year and a half away, really. 2028, 60% of B2B sales tasks via generative AI-driven conversational UIs. So think of Gong, think of Kaya and Outreach, think of Clarity and these other tools. And the challenge for us is how do we in pre-sales leadership and individual contributors, recognizing this, how do we bring that human intelligence into it and build our subject matter expertise into these tools and leverage them?
So let's talk about how we do that. How are you advising individuals and organizations on how to do that?
Going back to your overwhelming statement, one of the things that we did at SAP Concur that I think is just a phenomenal industry-wide model. Leaders like Gladys Simon, Jason Ossenkamp, Aubrey Cote at SAP Concur work together with our 200 solutions consultants globally, come up with I'd call it maturity level, but a 4-part series that every organization that is feeling overwhelmed and needs to adopt AI should think and consider this. Number one, what is AI? And you have everybody from observers to minimalists to maximalists. That's from a study that Salesforce did, where you're really leaning in and using it. And that first level is, what is generative AI? How can I use it? What use cases, whether it be prospecting or helping me write a demo script or do a 10K analysis, et cetera. The next step is, how do I sell AI in our software and our solutions? And this is fascinating, Chris. I talk to a lot of CEOs and technical leaders. Finally, we have a pre-sales tech stack. Finally, and it's just over the last few years. There's lots of great solutions out there. Every single software solution out there is driving and moving to agentic AI revenue platforms and business outcome solutions. We got to be selling not features and functions, but business outcomes proven by value. The challenge is agentic AI is a 2025 thing. And I'd argue that generative AI was really something that we tried to think about in 2024. We're implementing that now. Agentic AI is coming out, and really, I think it's the use in 2026 where we're going to start to see that these business outcomes deliver or not. So the challenge for us is, in pre-sales, we're the subject matter experts on theory, not on reality. And so the best solutions out there that many of us are driving, having transformed to this AI platform, really needs to be thinking about how are we selling those outcomes that the agents will deliver for us in this augmented workforce that all of our C-suite is being forced and needing to deliver on.
Yeah.
Oh, so 2 more. Sorry, 2 more. I forgot. Productivity, we talked about. How do we use that's the 3rd module. And the last one is ethically and compliance. And that's a big one. How do we make sure we're not taking our customer list, putting in ChatGPT with personally identifiable information saying, oh, tell me how to prioritize this. Sorry.
No. So I want to just take a half a step back to what you were just saying about how do we sell the AI? Because I do think this presents a new challenge for those of us in this role who are actually trying to, and it's so interesting to me. There's how do we use AI for ourselves in our role, right?
Right.
How does
Right.
the organization use AI sort of in the sales process? And then
Right.
how do we sell our AI? Let's talk about that third one. How do we, because I do think it changes the way we demonstrate product. It changes the way we demonstrate solution, because in my simple brain, to me, all AI in essence works the same. You feed it something, and then it goes and does something, and then it feeds it back, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, what are you either seeing, or how are you coaching or consulting people on the best way to demonstrate and sell your AI?
Yeah. That's really something I'm learning to discover out there alongside my peers and leaders in the industry. So great. We've created these new features and functions and these agents. How do we actually drive value off of that? And again, I think it's taking what the theory and the intent of our developers are, what the needs of our customers are, really listening to what their needs are, and making sure that in pre-sales we're setting the right expectations. We're selling on promise right now. We're selling on futures. Let's be real. That's how fast the industry is moving. And as that promise becomes more reality, then we'll have customer stories, success, et cetera, that we will build on. And I think really 2025 is our year of opportunity to do that. I think one of the things you and I also talked about, and how do I coach and help leaders out there think about this, is you said the keyword change. Gone are the days where I can continue to drive value in my organization as a pre-sales professional and do customer demonstrations. I need to be thinking about, how do I take that extra expertise and how do I put it in multiple channels? How do I put it in digital libraries? How do I build it into agentic workflows? How do I build agents that help me, my peers, or my sales leaders? So this concept of change is really future proofing, is becoming future fit. How do I use innovation as a way to build a muscle and emotion, so I'm constantly learning on how to be relevant for myself, my peers, and our profession out there? So change is really hard to do. And there's concepts like AdCar and others out there that help us embrace these new technologies and pilot AI, et cetera.
Do you think there's going to be a gap between, and maybe even a growing gap between the people that not just embrace AI, but really lean into the point where they're not just leveraging AI, but learning how to build their own agents? And because to me, I use AI a lot. I'm not building anything with it. Like, I'm not building my own agent. And even that even has me beginning to wonder, like, am I falling behind because I'm not actually building stuff? So do you think the new requirement for an SE is actually, no, you shouldn't just be leveraging it. You should actually be training AI to do certain things for you?
Interesting. I was just looking at an executive role and an opportunity at a company here in Seattle, lovely company. And in doing discovery for the role, the requirements were they were changing their organization from about 20 solutions consultants globally that are feature function based to business outcome value driven was one requirement. And the other was transforming them to agentic AI selling multiplier. And so there's a lot of buzzwords in there, but all that, what that really meant in talking to them is, look, the CR is looking for the solutions consultants to build agents within their solution to create. So you kind of have this AI studio, and we can create in a RevTech technology, we can go in and start drinking our own champagne, or dog fooding, as you want to call it, to start building out these agents. And so I would say it's incumbent upon all this now to figure out how to safely use generative AI and start there. Build out just like a handful, 5 or 10 well-engineered prompts. And there's a lot of training and research and advice that you can come to me or others on how to build that library. But build 5 or 10 and just use that for discovery. What are the KPIs I need for my customer in their industry? What is the What are the objectives that are the competitors that might be in this space that I need to be thinking about when you're doing discovery? So I think it's a matter of just starting small and then getting out there so we can get into, yes, 2026, we'll all have some better business outcomes and experience in building agents, but some people are requiring it when they're building organizations right now.
I'm just taking a half a step back. Do you recall, and you've been in the pre-sales world for what, 20, 25, 30 years, something like that?
Nearly 2 decades.
2 decades. Do you recall a time in 20 years where there has been so much change and uncertainty?
No. That's why it's another concept I think you and I might have talked about. It's really VUCA'd up right now. You can translate that in other ways, but it's really volatile. It's uncertain. It's complex. There's a lot of ambiguity. And I don't care if you're a frontline solutions consultant, technical consultant, value engineer, Chris, or if you're a CRO or a CEO, everybody I talk to is feeling that. So there's a real desire to kind of be fearful and scared. And how do I retreat? Or, oh my God, it's going to take my job.
Yeah.
AI is going to show us who is adapting. That divide you're talking about is simply going to show who's adapting and who's using it not to replace them, but to scale their work. And I think this is an opportunity. It's a growth mindset. So it's a real mind trip with how much disruption in nearly 2 decades that I've seen. And I see it as an opportunity. I kind of am, they call me optimistic Oehling for a reason. And I tell me it can't be done and I'll go make it happen. That's what we do in pre-sales. Tell me no, and we'll go find a way to get around that and deliver value.
Brian, let me push pause just for a minute, folks. I'm speaking to Brian Oehling. We're talking about the future pre-sales, and as you might guess, particularly or specifically with regards to AI and how AI changes our profession. It changes what's expected of us. It's changing the industry as a whole. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, or if you're out there and just want to say hello, please feel free to say hello. So, Brian, I want to take this a step further. We've talked about some of the, I think you said sort of the 4 sort of dimensions of AI, and I wrote them down. What is it? How do I sell it? How do we use it? And how do we do so in an ethical and compliant manner? Let's talk about that 4th one just for a moment.
Yeah.
What are you seeing out there in terms of concerns about being ethical, maintaining control, appropriate level of control over data sensitivity and that sort of thing?
Yeah. SAP has done a phenomenal job of training all of us in 2024 and really continuing to 2025 to be very intentional about how do we use generative AI to be safe and secure? How do we not take our customer information or PII, personally identifiable information, and put it out there in the universe so it can be leveraged by others, competitive intellectual property, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so what's absolutely fascinating is, I don't know if you know this, but there is an ISO certification for artificial intelligence.
Did not.
And I had no idea until recently. And one of the solutions at that same company I was talking about that's moving to wanting solutions consultant to build AI agents so they can build those internal, that once you internalize something in pre-sales, I can sell anything with high conversion rates. But you got to have experienced it, not just by street, theory, book smarts, but by street smarts. And so that organization has an ISO certification for artificial intelligence.
Wow.
And so I think it's important to start holding us all accountable to doing that. And as we're training our sales reps to use Microsoft Copilot, in our case, we put that behind our firewall. We had our IT department go and put boundaries around that so the information was staying internally, but still had access to real-time internet information. You have to partner cross-functionally with your IT or technical organizations to make sure that you're not like some of the sales reps that are out there taking their, like I said, their account list and putting it out there and asking ChatGPT to prioritize it. So if it's customer information that's public, okay. Use that. And you can write your prompts and you can engineer your library. You can use agents that are 100% going to be behind a safe, protective barrier.
Yeah. But by the way, I'm assuming somebody that you knew named Joyce Connor chimed in to say you could sell snow to a snowman. So Joyce, thanks for chiming in. Nice to see you. Let's talk about something that's very specific to the pre-sales role, which is demos. None of us in this profession like to be thought of as, demo jockeys. And
right.
Of course, the role is much bigger than giving a demo. But at the end of the day, one of the more prevalent aspects of our job and one of the more important points in a sales process is the demo. I've heard a lot of chatter about AIs, and there are some companies that are building AIs that can do a demo. There are a number of people who think that the AI is ultimately going to just replace the demo. I have a different opinion, but how do we need to sort of reimagine the demo and what that might mean moving forward?
Yeah, I think the best demo is the demo that's never delivered.
Ooh, that's and so would love that. Elaborate.
Okay, what I mean by that, and I remember working alongside my sales rep as a strategic partner, and we're getting ready for this conversation. And I spent 40 hours preparing this software demonstration. It was golden, perfection, outcome, value driven. We start engaging with the buyer, and we never once showed the software, and they bought the software. And that's simply because, and I think this goes down to the podcast I saw you and Keith Carson talk about, where you're really kind of focused on serving what the customer's needs are, and how you get to that demo that's never delivered being the best demo that buys software, that converts software. Is somebody told me, and I think it goes to what your podcast was with Keith, what's the conversation that your buyer has in the room when you're not there? And if you show up on a sales call and you're addressing what their needs are, what their concerns are, what their priorities are, versus you getting to President's Club, you and your sales rep, I think that's when we really start taking our human empathy and our authenticity to drive those. So that's one thing. Second thing is define demo. And I think that a lot of us think of, well, that's a software tell, show, tell, scripts where you have to go through and do that in the demo stage. Well, I'd argue that the demo starts at that 83% of buyer enablement before they ever get to you. The last 17% of the cycle is you and your sales rep strategically competing against others for that 17% to win the business. And so it's around taking your subject matter expertise. That's really what our value is. We're storytellers of value, and we have deep subject matter expertise, which is expensive to develop in organizations and important to retain, because when we attach to our sales deals, sales improve. That has nothing to say about sales reps. It means we're here to augment and make them better. They're better at finding the deal and helping close the deal. They need us to help tell that story of value and demonstrate our subject matter expertise. So how we do that is now through multiple channels, as we talked about. How can we go and use tools like Synthesia? So we're using Synthesia to create AI avatars out there and write scripts based on, knowledge or outlines that our solutions consultants gave us. And we created some demo solution videos at 80% of the time, reducing the time. And so we're taking the demo, we're digitizing it, we're helping it travel digitally way ahead of it, so that by the time it gets to us, that's the value creation side. Now it's the value framing, and that's that human intelligence, that artificial intelligence that's helping us research and prepare for these demos, so it absolutely nails the value and the business outcomes that they have to have.
As you were speaking, I found myself thinking, I mean, you're so right. I mean, the truth is the demo, the demo should be at best a sideshow, right? I mean, at best, the demo is a stage prop, right?
Yeah.
Which we but the interesting thing, as you were speaking, this was going through my mind. The interesting thing is that so often it's actually the account executive who's coming to us saying, well, let's just give them a demo, right? I feel like there's still such a focus on, I believe there's still a perception within our industry that the demo is just this magical thing that, well, if they just see the product in action, like that'll convince them. And the irony, and here's where I'm going with this, Brian, to a certain degree, the irony is that as much as things are changing, and things are clearly changing, this is what we're talking about, some things stay the same, right? The truth is it's our relationship with sales and our ability to communicate with sales, number one. Number two, it's the ability to communicate value without necessarily showing product, right? Now, whether we're using AI to help us do this or not is sort of, we'll put that aside just for a moment.
Yeah.
But there are still fundamental truths about how to sell that I think stand up regardless of AI. And that's sort of what's sort of unexpectedly distilling from this conversation for me.
Yeah. One of my, ironically, I never wanted to get into sales when I was in college. That was one of the career opportunities my career counselor told me. He's like, oh, you'll be a lawyer, a doctor, you can get into sales. I'm like, nope, not doing that. And I've done it a long time, and I've absolutely loved it. And so furthermore, working with one of the best sales reps I ever worked with, we were killing it together as a team, because it is a team sport, as we all know. I am not their support. I am sales strategic partner, and we sell as a team. We can finish each other's sense when we get really good. But he talked about sales being the oldest profession. Mm-hmm. Think about that. Like 100%. Like pre-sales, I did a study. I was a keynote speaker at a Vivint conference back in October of 23. And one of the things I did was a study of pre-sales back from really when it started in the 1970s. That was a long time ago for some of us, but really for folks like me, like I've seen the evolution go through and where we're at now. And we're just perfectly in the next iteration as long as we embrace that evolution. Yeah. But sales has been around since millennia. And so it's not going away. It's how we harness it, how we lean into it, how we use ROI to make sure that productivity through AI and digital and means is delivering value or not. And if it isn't, let's take our human intelligence and shift to find other ways to drive better customer value and outcomes so that we can win in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, I do believe that there are fundamental principles that are still, that still hold true. There are universal truths.
Yes.
And AI is just a new tool to help us improve efficiencies and automate certain things that we don't need to spend our time doing anymore. And again, it's just so fascinating to me finding the right things to automate, the right either processes or thought processes to leverage AI for, and what not to leverage AI for. And that probably is what scares me a little bit about the future. We're talking about future-proofing the profession, future-proofing ourselves. I think the potential danger is becoming so dependent on AI that we no longer think for ourselves. We no longer use our own judgment or trust our own judgment. And we just sort of blindly follow, sort of like GPS, right? Like I never worry about where anything else, even if I know how to go to a certain place, I find myself more times than not just following GPS because I'm like, I don't know, maybe it knows better than me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, are we to get to that point where we're so reliant on AI that we just stop thinking for ourselves?
Yeah, it's going back to that GPS concept, and by the way, Joyce is the wife of my best friend Vince, who lives a couple blocks up the road, and he and I ride dirt bikes, and we've ridden dirt bikes in Ecuador, Vietnam, Thailand, 800 miles, and we do that because we leverage technology to put on our bikes on our smartphone, and we can go out there and use it to navigate. Now, I'm simply using it to augment where I want to go in my journey, but I'm able to have the freedom to look up and explore and see the nature and the mountain and the backcountry is absolutely gorgeous. So GPS is a tool where I don't need to know how to bring out, in the boats, the sextant and kind of figure out the sundial and all that. I just want to ride my dirt bike with my motorcycle gang, my friends. And so in the same way, I feel like I am in this little bit, like all of us, this productivity crisis where I'm going, I feel guilty because I'm not writing this email myself. And I literally had this experience, which I think some of us can relate to. First, last night, my wife and I are having dinner, and she's a third grade teacher, has been doing that for 2 decades. And so we either talk about pre-sales or teaching, at dinner. And she was getting training on how to teach new curriculum on writing to third graders. So take that. Now, I recently had an email that I was writing, a very important email that typically would take me anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to think about an executive C-suite, very important critical message in an email I need to get across. How do I take this much information and synthesize it into 4 sentences? It takes me a lot of time to do that. So, and I know how to write, but I could sit there and spend 4 hours, or I could take my outline and my critical thinking, what I need to communicate, and have AI write that for me and go get it done, and then write 7 other emails. That's productivity and scale. So I was asking my wife last night, we're in education teaching our kids in ways that they're not going to be using in the future. And I was spent a time, if you look at my resume in education technology, our educational system is having to teach to jobs that don't even exist. Again, think about AI, think about digital. So what you do rely on, which is universal truth, humans own critical thinking. We don't give it away. We own it and we use it, whether we're writing an email, whether we're using it to engineer a prompt to help us better improve our discovery. And so I'll pause on that topic.
Here's the thought that came to mind, Brian, as you were sharing this, and this is very akin to something that you and I have talked about, and one of the things that I think really sort of connected us, which is I think the internal sense of right and wrong is really what is, I think, the human reality and the human truth. I think our ability to there's a certain moral compass, if I can use that term.
Yeah.
And this, to me, this ties very closely. People like to use the term emotional intelligence. I've been leaning into the term emotional maturity. I think it's more than just emotional intelligence. It's emotional maturity.
I love that.
It's having a sense of emotional maturity, which, and to me, part of maturity is making the difficult decision and doing things that aren't necessarily the easy thing to do or the fun thing to do, but the right thing to do. And I think when we talk about, quote, the right thing to do, that's where that moral compass comes into play as well. So I think there's something here. I think when we talk about AI plus HI, I feel like part of that is that sense, that true sense of right and wrong, and the ability to make the difficult decisions. I don't know. There's a picture forming in my mind, but does this strike a chord with you in any way?
Yeah, and I love that concept of emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. I think I use street smarts and book smarts a lot, that theory versus tactical and practical reality. And today we're wanting to give leaders a sense of the vision and the evolution that pre-sales is in, but also some real tactical and practical applications like the 6 Ps. And I'd love to talk about how this can all fall through with all of that in some of your concepts. But with emotional maturity, it's the application of emotional intelligence. I would add on to what you're saying is, okay, so here's kind of the concept, but this moral compass. Now, what should I or shouldn't I do? And AI, like we've created these AI agents and potential organizational structures and workforces that are going to execute tasks on our behalf, where we are simply going to be facilitators of tasks that get executed. We won't do them. The agentic workforce will do it for us. And those that are going to be the most valuable in an organization are the ones that know how to harness agents that execute tasks on their behalf using their human intelligence and their moral compass, their emotional maturity, balanced and innovated with sort of a digital strategy that our leadership teams train us and enable us on, make sure we're ethical and compliant, that moral compass, I think, are the boundaries around that. And it's so new out there. We have all these solutions out there that are telling us they're going to solve world peace and everything, but there's not a lot of discussion out there about, well, Salesforce is going to get to 1 billion agents. I just heard Mark Benioff talk about this ecosystem of 1 billion agents. I got this rev tech saying I own the entire AI revenue platform, but if I have 17 services or SaaS solutions I need to close a deal for AE and pre-sales, and they all own the AI workforce and agents, like how are they communicating? So it's so new and a lot of theory out there that we have to use our moral compass to figure out what's right, truly what's going to deliver ROI and outcome for our customers. And here's another scary stat. So while 95% of us by 2025 are going to have generative AI do research for us, MIT recently announced a study that is proving the hype that is now coming out that 95% of generative AI initiatives deliver zero business impact.
So in other words, it's just a series of science projects. Is that what you're?
Pretty much. And somebody's science project at a science fair is going to win. And it's up to our moral compass and our emotional maturity to determine what's noise and hype, what's disruption, and what really is going to bring value.
By the way, Carl Green chimed in with a great observation. He said he likes the idea of lifting intelligence towards maturity or wisdom. A dad joke about knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. AI can do the intel. We need to be the wisdom. That is really well said, Carl. If we were in a room together, I'd be tossing you a poker chip for sharing that.
Yeah, I'd be high-fiving you.
That's really good. It's well said. There was another thought that I had, and it probably escaped me. So why don't I just push pause just for a quick minute, Brian? Believe it or not, we've been at this almost 45 minutes, folks. I'm speaking to Brian Oehling. We're talking about the future pre-sales. We're talking about AI and what he referred to. I wrote it down here, I'm going to glance again. He referred to it as augmented indispensability, adding or taking the capabilities of AI and combining that with our human intelligence. And that's what really propels us into the future of this profession. I find for myself, Brian, that I have used AI to help me organize my thoughts really successfully and effectively. And I'll give you a good example. There's one engagement in particular that I'm working with a client, and we agreed on a number of topics that they wanted me to focus on a series of workshops. But I wanted to put it into more of an overarching sort of and meaningful series. Right. And I used chat to help me think through, and it came up. What it came up with was absolutely brilliant. And so now it's sort of this 6-part series, and each thought sort of builds on the other. It didn't tell me the topics. It didn't tell me the content or the context. It just helped me sort of think through and overall. And that's just a way in which I have, in one of the many ways I have benefited from AI. Do you have an example like that where maybe you've used AI to take your knowledge and your expertise, but then have it augment it in such a way where 1 + 1 is, greater than 2, greater than 3, et cetera.
Yeah. By the way, how you're using it is exactly how we should all be using it. We're not asking it to create thought for us. We're asking us to help synthesize or organize thought. I recently have been reading a Gartner, McKinsey, or a LinkedIn white paper every day to build up and keep innovating and learning about how to modernize sales organizations. And it's difficult to keep all the stats and the topics and the thoughts. And so after reading these documents, I highlighted in yellow the key aspects I don't remember, put in ChatGPT and say, now create a summary of all these documents that I read so I can go back and refer to them. And that would take a week to do because these things are so deep. I think going back to getting these prompts and engineered ways just to sort of help me synthesize my thought, you can now reuse that over and over again and all these other prospects you're going to be engaging. But yet there's a holy wow factor. It's going to be holy wow. This produced a new thought for me in a way that I hadn't thought about, to holy wow, this is horrific. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, which means I didn't engineer the prompt right. I didn't give enough human intelligence in there to help it better synthesize my thoughts. So I think I've got countless examples of using ChatGPT. ChatGPT is my poison that I use every day to synthesize my thought. But yeah.
Well, and you triggered a thought for me, and that is, at the risk of sounding a tad redundant, I love the notion of, quote, the evolution of thought. And to me, what is the definition of the evolution of thought? It's when two individuals, like you and myself, for example, or maybe a collection of individuals, a thought is initiated and then somebody sort of builds upon it. And then that triggers another idea and that builds upon it. And over a period of time, a thought goes from sort of this small sort of spark to now this blazing fire that we didn't anticipate. And when we're dealing with humans, that can take days, weeks, or months. I have discovered that I can sort of traverse the evolution of a thought in hours with ChatGPT. With one I'll just share, or I'll just sort of give it one little prompt of sort of a wild idea that I'm sort of kicking around, and it'll respond with a few comments and then questions, and then I'll sort of provide some context, and then it comes back. And I have a very high rate of idea flow, so my mind just goes. But I find in an hour I went from here to here to here to here to here. But all of a sudden I end up in this place, and just I am blown away by where that thought landed. That there's no chance ChatGPT would have gotten there on its own. But there's also no chance that I would have gotten there on my own without something like ChatGPT. To me, that is the most fascinating aspect of AI from my experience. Have you experienced someone?
I'm giggling and laughing because you and I experienced it when we had to cut ourselves off on email one night at about midnight, I think your time, and we had started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We were taking your HI plus your AI. We were taking my AI plus my HI skills, and we were in this email thread that was just a constant collaboration and iteration of the 6 Ps and how you take some of these best practices, tactical practices, and building them into the practicing or probing or performing or even perfecting it. And so I'm giggling because you and I were nerding out. We're like, okay, I got to go to bed. I got to have dinner. Like we're done. And so that was a great example of where you get in this infinite thought, and that can be overwhelming to okay, stop, critically think, what have I learned? How do I synthesize? How do I internalize this is important. And so that was a super fun.
Well, and coming full circle to something you said just a moment ago, it's harnessing that evolution of thought for either the good of the business or to sound a little bit overly dramatic, the good of mankind, right? It's one thing to have an evolution of thought. It's another thing for it to have direction and guidance and purpose for an outcome to benefit somebody or something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of that. By the way, Brian, I don't know if you noticed, Cliff actually asked a question. I want to make sure we get to it. This is actually something that I was going to ask you. So, Brian, Cliff, I'm glad you asked. Are there specific AI skills and or certifications that you believe SEs should pursue to better place themselves in the market? Cliff, thank you for asking.
Great question. I don't have a specific program or curriculum or certification yet, because I think the industry is still forming on that. I am starting to see where organizations are trying to get ISO certifications, and that will, I think, lead into certifications and whatnot that we can get. What I will say is there's tons of learning platforms. There's LinkedIn Learning. There is Coursera. And part of the challenge is knowing and not being overwhelmed with, like, where do I start? And so I would suggest that many of you who are trying to build up your skill as an individual contributor or a leader, get familiar first with generative AI. What is it? Again, going back to that, I'm a minimalist, or I'm an observer. I'm a little, overwhelmed or a little bit frightened about what it can do. Is it going to take my job? I don't know. And so just lean in with generative AI. Know how to engineer a prompt. And there are countless programs out there. Coursera is one that I've followed over the years, and they have Coursera for Business now. I read one of their white papers, and it talked about how, and it's fascinating. You look at Coursera, which has a lot of educational enablement content, and AI is the top skill that's being pursued in their platform, which is massive. It trains a ton of us up. And I think it's increased like 192% in the last 2 years. What do you think is right below that? Also pretty incredible, but a double digit, not a triple digit growth. What's the next skill that Coursera is training us all on? What do you think?
I'm afraid to guess. I'm assuming building AI agents.
Critical thinking.
Really interesting.
It's kind of fascinating, and thank God that we have. Yeah, we got to figure out the skills and how do we deal with generative AI engineer prompts. That's step one. Next, beyond that, how do we go and deal with agents and agentic workflows and processes that execute tasks for us? That's another whole set of skills you should develop. So first, what is generative AI? What's a large language model? What is machine learning? How do we see it in different forms that have been out actually for decades? And then how do we start to internalize it, use it like crazy, augmented with these skills that you're learning, and then start getting into what our companies and our solutions will be giving us in terms of agentic AI.
It's interesting as you were speaking and you mentioned critical thinking. I know for me, I think the two most important skills, and it's almost a dichotomy or a paradox, if I can use that term, Brian. And here's what I mean by that. I think the two most important skills necessary to leverage AI are one that we've already talked about, which is emotional maturity. I think we have to have a certain amount of emotional maturity to best leverage AI. I also think the ability to communicate and more importantly, the ability to clearly and concisely articulate ideas. The more we can clearly, particularly if we're sort of interacting with the AI, the more we can clearly articulate the nuances of a situation, the nuances of what it is that we're looking for, the more equipped AI is to provide valuable responses. If we don't have the ability to articulate the situation, the nuances, the details, et cetera, the less it can help us. Here's the paradox. The paradox is not only do those two things help us use AI better, but as a pre-sales professional,
Yeah.
they also position us to be less at risk in our job if the two skills we have are emotional maturity and the ability to communicate, right? So not only does it let us leverage the technology better, but it makes us more future-proof against the technology. Does that resonate with you, Brian?
It absolutely does. I like, we talked about human empathy and human authenticity winning. And I that really, if you go the next layer down, and it's what you're talking about, that emotional intelligence, it's the ability to communicate. And I'd add a third one, I'd say yes, and Chris, critical thinking. And that is going back now to what our kids and what my wife is teaching in third grade. Is the answer to have her just immediately stop teaching her students how to write in third grade? Or is it to, and just lean in on here's how to engineer a prompt because you don't need to know how to write? That's wrong. It's no different than us having to learn our multiplication tables and how we, a lot of different ways to teach math, but using a calculator, like thank God I have calculators because as an engineer, I can now construct a bridge using my emotional maturity, my ability to communicate with others, with the customer's requirements. And I don't need to do the painful slide rules. I can use technology to help make me more effective and be more focused and present with my prospect, customer, or buyer.
It's interesting, and we've used an analogy with GPS, and we've used a few other analogies, and at one point I was thinking to myself, like I was thinking about the GPS, and I was thinking, I mean, here's the truth: I don't really need to know the roads anymore. I need because I've got GPS,
right?
And there are so many other similar analogies. We don't need to know how to spell anymore. We just don't, because everything spells for us, right? So and as you were talking about reading various articles, the thought going through my mind was, at first I was like, well, gee, maybe I'm falling behind because I'm not reading all these articles. But then I thought, well, maybe I don't need to read the articles because if I need to know, I'll just ask ChatGPT. So, but to me, here's the difference. Being able to interact with a GPS is not too difficult. You just have to be able to, in essence, read and understand a map and listen to what they're telling you to do next, right? Being able to leverage AI is not as straightforward as being able to read a map. You need to know how to communicate with the AI to fully leverage it. And to me, that's what we're talking. That's where this whole idea of emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, critical thinking, and the ability to articulate the situation. And the other thought that I had, and I know we're probably about to run over here, Brian. I try to keep these to an hour, but this is just so much fun for me. It's interesting. My sister is dealing with a difficult situation, and I suggested to her. I said honestly, if it were me, I would use ChatGPT and see if that can help you think it through.
Yeah.
And she shared with me what something that she came back with ChatGPT, and then I said, well, let me see if I can play around with it. What's coming to mind for me right now is the importance of being fully honest with ourselves when we're, quote, seeking help from ChatGPT. And that, again, this falls into this whole emotional maturity, right? So
it's I'll be sensitive to the time here, but I'll share with you. This is literally a conversation I was having with a few folks at a Better Career, Yuji Higashi's company, recently in Bellevue, and we were talking about how you can leverage generative AI to help with therapy sessions. We're bringing this information in and taking some, situation and how would you handle it? So much so that if you listen to Sam Altman, I think is the CEO of OpenAI, he realized that people were becoming too dependent on ChatGPT 4, the 4.0 model. And he took away a lot of that kind of therapy and counseling capabilities in the 5.0 model. So he literally is trying to dumb it down so we cannot give away therapy and counseling to artificial intelligence. That's a dangerous situation. And
100%.
So I've got a lot of great troubled issues in relationships that I get some advice and guidance on. They're like, yeah, holy wow, that's garbage or misinformation, or holy wow, I'm going to go try that and apply it.
Yeah.
But last thing I'll say is, you're talking about that ability to communicate. And I think I giggle as a pre-sales leader. My whole job, whether it's a frontline or an executive, is to align with my sales partner, right? That's one of the 6 P's there. And my ability to be effective in pre-sales is, how do I strategically align and know how to communicate and understand what the objectives of my account executive partner are, and how do I communicate with them? All we're saying here is there is a new teammate. We have to learn how to communicate, and how do we bring our strategic partner, not our support, not our therapist, how do we bring technology, whether it's tools like Consensus or Synthesia, Reprise, there's a whole Salio out there. How do we bring them alongside and know how to communicate with them? We're still always going to have to perfect how we partner and align and communicate with sales, and how they partner and communicate with us. We just have a new teammate that's going to help us be incredibly productive and scale.
And to your point that you made earlier, we need to remember that we still have, if I can use this term, the upper hand in dealing with them. They answer to us. We don't answer to them.
Bingo.
Right. So
they work for us, not the other way around.
Yes. Brian, this has been so much fun. I truly enjoy speaking with you. I know we're going to have fun finally meeting in person next week. By the way, Carl, I love what Carl said here. If I've achieved great things, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants, said Newton. 100%. By the way, one of my favorite books, Steal Like an Artist. The truth is there is no new information. There are no new truths in the world.
Right.
Like everything that we know, we just learn from somebody else. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just our version of truth and perspective and reality. So anyway, for those of you who hung around a little beyond an hour, thank you so much for being here. And by the way, somebody asked earlier if this is being recorded. Yes, it's being recorded here on LinkedIn, and it's actually available on YouTube. If you want to find it on YouTube, you can look it up. Brian, thank you so much for being here. I hope you'll come back and join me and just kick around some ideas. Safe to say that you would welcome anybody to reach out to you here on LinkedIn to connect.
Yes.
Super.
Love what you're doing with the 6 Habits. Keep it up. We need it. It's real practical application. Just got to do it.
I appreciate
what you're doing, Chris, with us.
I appreciate that a great deal. Folks, if you care to check out more of these sessions, you can follow Tech Sales Advice on LinkedIn. Of course, you can visit me at techsalesmastery.com if you haven't already, to learn more about what we do. Brian, hang around just for a minute backstage so we can say a few parting words. To everybody else, have a good week. Enjoy Labor Day weekend for those of you celebrating that. And we will see you next week on Tech Sales Advice. Thanks all.